Welcome everyone to the July 5th, 2022 council meeting. Council met for a brief session for the open session and was moved by Councilor Backlund, second by Councilor Keith. Pursuant to section 239(2) and 3 of the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended, Council of the Corporation of Town of Parry moved to a meeting closed to the public in order to address the matter pertaining to C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land for municipal or local board purposes, proposed property exchange. F, advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, proposed property exchange. And K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, instruction to be applied upon any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. Proposed property exchange was carried and that meeting was held. As a reminder, this meeting is live streamed and recorded and available on the internet by visiting the Parry Sound's website at www.parrysound.ca. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people under the Robinson-Huron Treaty and the waterways traveled by the Métis of this region. I'd also like to remind the public about the Civic Scholarship for college and university students that the town is currently accepting applications for the 2022 Civic Scholarship Award. A $500 scholarship is awarded annually to one university or college student who is a permanent resident of the town of Parry Sound and is entering or within their second year of classes with at least a 60% course load in September of this year. Full eligibility criteria and an application form can be found on the town's website. Just search scholarship. Deadline for receipt of applications is July 25th. Now, at this time, I'd like to have Chief Thompson introduce our new manager of planning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce our new manager of planning, Jeremy Rand. Jeremy comes to us having most recently worked for the Municipal Catholic District School Board. Jeremy has also worked at various municipalities in the area, including the town of Gravenhurst, District of Muskoka, and the town of Bracebridge. So Jeremy, in his personal time, he's active in the rowing community, being a former president of the Severn River Rowing Club. He's a member of the Georgia Bay Rowing Club Board and chair of the Muskoka Fall Classic Rowing Regatta. In addition to rowing and volunteering, Jeremy is also an active curler and a dodgeballer. So welcome, Jeremy.
Yeah, welcome, Jeremy. Thank you. Yeah. Anything you want to add to what Chief Thompson said? Or?
I think that summarizes it pretty nicely. Thank you, Dave. To your worship, I've heard a lot of great things about council and staff here, and really looking forward to being part of the team and working on a lot of building upon the great projects that have already are underway and working on some of the initiatives. Again, I've heard a lot of great things so far, so good. It looks like an amazing team. And just really
great. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Is there any prioritization or additions to the agenda? There is an addition. Oh, okay. So we have a spot in the agenda for that.
We propose that we do it right for correspondence.
Okay, all right, we can do that. Okay. So we have an addition of Mr. Diamond's report. And may I have a move and second for the agenda, please? Councilor Backlund, Councilor Orneman, that the council agenda for July 5th, 2022 be approved as amended. All in favor? And that's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary or interest in the general nature thereof? No? Okay. Mover and seconder for the minutes, please. Councilor McCann, Councilor Burton, The minutes of the regular council meeting held June 21st, 2022 be approved as circulated. Is there any discussion or comments on those past minutes? No? All in favor then? And that's carried. Questions of staff? Council Gordon.
I have three, your worship. I'm going to pick on Mr. Cairns first. I have three questions. I'm going to pick on Mr. Cairns first. There's been some inquiries made, Mr. Cairns, regarding line painting of Bow Street in particular. Can you give us and the public an update as to where that stands, please?
Yes, certainly, through your worship. So line painting has been a hot topic, as you mentioned, and we have recently been inquiring with the contractor that was awarded the contract to complete the painting. So our staff look after stop blocks and crosswalks throughout town. They're 70% done with that workload. Line painting in the last couple of years has been a bit challenging from a supply perspective. At some point, I hope to be able to stop referring to the pandemic as issues related to work that's being delayed. Unfortunately, it is part of it right now. Our contractor was scheduled to complete line painting prior to May 19th. The weather was not overly cooperative at that point in May. The ability to paint the lines is influenced by the weather conditions. It's a water-based paint, so it needs to be above a certain temperature, humidity, rain, that sort of thing. We are actively pursuing the completion of the line painting as soon as possible. Mr. Benazza and I were on the line this evening, making sure that we have all bases covered to have it completed as soon as possible. It is a fairly specialized process in terms of trucks and equipment that are available. And not everybody has them, and everybody wants it at the same time. So that is no excuse, and we are going to do our best to ensure that this delay does not happen in the future.
My second question is also for Mr. Cairns. I apologize. There's a situation on Kirsten Heights where we have some signage out. There's a fairly significant depression in the roadway. Listening to the folks who live in the neighborhood, they have some concerns about safety. That sign and depression is pretty much on a 90-degree curve, and there's some young children in the area. They're wanting to know when they should expect some remediation or what we're going to do to correct that situation.
Through your worship. So actually, we've been discussing that particular instance as well. It is on the corner. There are a couple of sets of in-ground infrastructure in that area. So we will have the infrastructure inspected directly to make sure that there isn't a secondary issue before we fix the surface. I hope to have that information this week, and we can make a decision on whether we simply are able to overlay to alleviate that depression, or if it's a larger issue underground that needs to be repaired. So hopefully the next week or two we'll know exactly what the solution is.
Thank you. And finally, my last question, Mr. Mayor, is I've been notified by a few people that upon the arrival of the Pearl Mist, there was no greeting party. I'm not a cruise boat expert, but I'm kind of led to believe that that's somewhat unusual. And I guess I'm wanting to know, I'm not even sure who to ask this question of, but I guess I want to suggest maybe that we put our heads together between the town and the DBA and whoever else and correct that. We seem that, we're having a significant number of ships come in here, and I'm told that number is to increase. I think if we're going to build on those successes, we need to, provide the services that those businesses and individuals are looking for. So I'm hopeful that somebody will be able to come back in a couple of weeks and tell us that this is how we plan to proceed in the future.
My understanding was that was all set, but I saw Mr. Harris had his hand up, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Borneman. I'm meeting with our economic development officer who's in charge of the cruise boat, cruise industry program, and I'll be speaking to him tomorrow just to confirm. But my understanding is there is a program in place. That information was communicated with the Waterfront Advisory Committee as well as to what the plans are each time a cruise boat arrives. So I'll follow up and see, just confirm that that is happening, and we'll report back to council.
Thank you. Councilor McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess we're going to ensure that Mr. Kearns earns his money tonight. So Councilor Borneman beat me to one of the questions I had with regards to the line painting. Just before I go on to my question, though, I would, it's my understanding that the vendors that provide this service are very, very few in number in our province, and that is exacerbating the whole situation. And I wondered about the liability that the town might suffer as a result of the roads and the conditions. But I think you stated that we haven't been negligent, that we've made every effort we can to get the job done. In a perfect world, it could be done and would be done. So anyhow, earlier this or last week, I asked for an update on the street lighting, and you sent me a detailed email. For the public's sake, perhaps maybe you could go over that again. I've been asking about additional lighting at the intersection of Bowes and Pine Street, and also on Queen Street. So perhaps maybe you could let us know where we are with that and what the logistics are challenging us.
Sure. Excuse me, through your worship. So I think you hit the nail on the head. The logistics are something that are certainly a challenge. Sound like a bit like a broken record, referring back to some of the challenges over the last couple of years in terms of supply chain. That's one of them. The other is we've had to work through power supply issues. Obviously, the streetlights need a form of power to work, and we need to be able to tie that in, whether it's grid or otherwise. One of the other issues is the significant increase we're seeing in the cost of almost everything. Obviously, the inflation rates are not subsiding. We're seeing that reflected in a lot of the materials we're purchasing, so we have to be conscious of that too as we move forward with some of these ideas and programs. We still have repairs and maintenance to perform, and unfortunately, those are all being impacted by these significant increases as well. And as I mentioned, I think in that explanation too, we need to ensure that the infrastructure that's in place can support the addition of new light heads, poles, standards. They're not necessarily designed initially to support other infrastructure. So that's, unfortunately, it all takes a bit of time. And that leads to a sort of due diligence process in terms of ensuring we don't create an additional issue by trying to potentially solve that.
So it's not as simple as putting a light bulb on the top of the pole that to make it work. Just one more question, and I'm not sure who to address this one to, but just a concern about the audio quality. And I understand our staff is working on that. So for those who are watching online or catch the council meeting played back on your TV, maybe someone could speak towards what we're doing to try to improve on the audio quality for those who are not here in person.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you, and through you and worship. This is the third in the in-person meetings using the hybrid model. The last meeting, there were some adjustments made on audio. We are faced with the challenge of the technology that we have that's available be a composite of things to, in a larger room like this to serve the purpose. So for example, the owl typically is used in a boardroom. We are discussing the possibility of testing with some other equipment, including using a second owl. So we will be trying to do that prior to the next meeting. And perhaps, making a determination on, although the audio quality isn't as good as it was prior to the pandemic when we used a different system, nor as good during the purely Zoom meetings. The question, is it good enough for keeping a record of the meetings and being able to hear it? So there is a bit of determination that needs to be made, and perhaps staff recommendation on that, if that is what council wishes, a staff recommendation on that. And we believe that with the equipment that we are using, that we have, as our IT person has put it, squeeze the most out of it. So this may be what we will get with purely the equipment you're using. Video that is not totally sharp, particularly from the owl, particularly the further you are away from it, and audio that is not as crisp, but that may still be heard and may still be seen.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, so you would like some direction then?
So, yes, just in a recap, I think what I'm trying to do is give an explanation where we're at. I think with this equipment, this is probably the best we have. If council wishes to have further research on other options or something besides, we would need that direction.
Well, I'd like a mover and second for that. Councillor Keith and Councillor McCann. Any comment, discussion on that? Councillor Backlund?
I've participated in different municipal council meetings and watched them, and I'm just wondering if maybe if we looked at others. Oh, sorry. I was just wondering if maybe we could look into some solutions that other municipalities might be using that are in similar to kind of see how the quality of their products are.
I think that'll be all part of the research.
Yeah.
We'll figure that all out. Yeah. Councillor King.
So, and I would just add too that I guess studies indicate that people will tolerate bad video, but are not so likely to tolerate bad audio. So I would think that the sound of our audio, the quality would be most important.
And a disc jockey would know that a scratchy record is not a lot of fun to listen to. Right, Councillor McCann? Yeah. Okay, nothing further than all in favor? And that direction is carried. Okay. We'll figure that out. Councillor Keith, you had a question.
Yes, I have two questions. One is for Mr. Cairns, and it's to clarify. I know I spoke to you before, and I know there was some work done on Hillsdale of some of those potholes, but I know I was driving there a couple of times within the last 7 days, and I can assure you, I don't think I'm yelling on Claudia, but I felt like I needed to be on that street. So there's still some potholes, and there's one there definitely I feel is very deep, and I know that I think we all like our vehicles to be kept intact. So can something be checked out about that, and at least first of all, that the hole be filled, and frankly, with the number of repairs that street has, I'm just wondering, where is that on the list? It's not a long street, so is it not possible when there's pavement available that somehow we can do a better job on that street? Because that's not good. That's my first question for you. Thanks.
Through your worship, we'll certainly take a look at that particular instance tomorrow. We will look at that. Our asphalt repair has been out constantly, weather permitting, as long as conditions are conducive to patching. It's pretty much a full-time activity for some of our staff. The street is a little bit bigger issue. There are some drainage issues that we need to address, and we've started to look at, it's high on our list, but it does involve a lot of in-ground infrastructure and drainage all the way down to the river. And so there's some considerations there in terms of outletting the drainage, not only collecting it on Hillcrest and from that whole drainage area, but conveying it all the way down to the river that we need to be able to address. So we'll be able to, as the asset management plan is maturing, certainly let you know exactly where that program or that particular street and project falls within the asset management plan as well.
And when can we expect to know that roughly? Are we talking fall time or are we talking next year?
For you, Mr. Mayor. So we now have a draft of our asset management plan. We're reviewing that as senior leadership team. So within the next month or so, I'm sure council will see finalized copy there. So short term.
Yeah, who? And I have another question, and that is for Chief Thompson. And it's a two-part question, and I'm sure he can clarify. I had some concerns today, and I'm sure you can best explain. One it has to do with the fire that I believe was on Emily Street, the house fire on Emily Street. The first question is, does one of the fire trucks only able to go around or to access William Street either on one side of the trestle or the other, but they can't go under? And the second question of, in respect to that house fire, there was concern at this point, like say within the last hour or so, has there been a clarification that it is now a safe site for a fire not reigniting this evening, anything like that? Can you clarify, please, Chief Thompson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to clarify that we're talking about William Street, not Emily Street. You did mention that in the second part of your question, but I just want to make sure that for everyone, the answer is that yes, the William Street Bridge is the only bridge in town that the tower truck, the ladder truck, will not go under. Every single firefighter is well aware of that. They know not to drive the fire truck underneath that, unlike some of the other truck drivers in town who often hit that bridge. We're well aware that the tower truck does not go under that bridge. The two pumper trucks both go under the bridge. With regards to that, and today's fire as an example, the fire was on the Cascade Street side of that bridge. We were well aware of that before we left the fire hall. We have firefighters who live in that area, and it's something that we all think about critically at all times, is how to best get the tower truck not only to this scene, but to many other scenes, because sometimes we will make a decision on how that truck will enter a scene based upon the street network and the size of the corners that we have to access. All there, that's an extremely large truck, and yet as today's fire proved, it's an extremely useful truck. So it's very important that we get it there and that we have it oriented properly for structured fires. We were able to do that today. With regards to the second part of your question, we were at that fire scene from approximately 10 this morning till about 2:30 or 3 this afternoon with active operations in place. We declared the fire out at this time. We were in the end able to actually get firefighters inside the building to do a very thorough search for any hotspots and to ensure that all hotspots had been extinguished. We will often, in most cases, and this is one of them, also go by the site after we have left the scene just to ensure that things have been extinguished. When we leave the scene, as we did this afternoon, we do return control of buildings over to the owners. The owner was on site with us, and when we left the site, in this case, we did turn control of the building over to that individual on site. I would like to say with regards to this today that was a very intense and difficult situation. We had support from all our allied agencies. The OPP were on scene. They were helping to evacuate, helping to control traffic. EMS, Grayson District EMS was on scene to take care of any firefighters who were over exhausted or if we had had any incidents on scene. And I also want to acknowledge our public works team. We're on scene, Mr. Benaza, ensuring that barriers were in place, as well as Mr. Paul, to ensure that we had adequate water pressure. Dispatchers are critical to our success as a team, and they took great care of us today, monitoring all our transmissions to ensure that everyone is kept safe and that the most current information is relayed to us on all fire scenes. So it is a significant team approach. McDougall Fire had as many firefighters on the scene as Parry Sound Fire did. We worked very closely with McDougall Fire on almost all incidents in both McDougall and Parry Sound, and it was seamless integration with that organization again today. So I just do want to extend credit to everyone who helped us have a successful conclusion. There was no individuals in the house at the time of the fire. The fire got a very strong hold of the dwelling before the neighbors were able to notice smoke. There were no injuries to firefighters or occupants or people in the area. There were a number of cats lost in the situation that did reside in the house. So that's a summary.
Thank you, and I'm sure that we're all glad to hear that there's such good cooperation between municipalities and a number of people in various departments that are involved when something unfortunate like this happens. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Back?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Microphone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two questions this evening. One is for Mr. Bonanza, and that was regards to the work being done. I today at the corner of Miller and Stephen, I saw him there today, so I thought I'd ask him, and he's in the room with attendance. So if you can explain what was going on there, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem, through you, Mr. Mayor. We were helping our water works department repair a broken curb stop there so they can service the new building that they're going to be erecting there.
Okay, thank you very much. And my second question, I'm not too sure who to direct this to, but it just is a follow-up into the comments of Councillor Keith and her questions about concerns about potholes. When I was in Ogra, a lot of municipalities had a report of pothole feature on their website, and I was going to bring this forward at the time, but I had gone to our website and there was on the easy menu, it was, I want to report. I swore it said, I want to report a problem, but I don't see it there anymore. And when I went to that page, it dropped down and it said potholes. So what I was wondering is, could we get some kind of analytics on how many concerns are submitted through our website in regards to potholes since we've implemented that? Like it should be something like an export file or something, but it would be really interesting to see that, because I admittedly have received a lot of personal feedback recently about the state of the roads in the community. So it would be interesting if that is also coming through through the feedback digitally on our website.
Through your worship, I'm going to say we should be able to pull that, and we'll figure that out. What I'd like to add on the topic of potholes, often when they're publicly identified, there is the minimum maintenance standard that we generally operate as or on for municipalities. And I will say we never wait until a pothole meets the standard, the minimum maintenance standard to qualify as a pothole. Because it's quite liberal, I'll say, before it requires repair. So, but yeah, we'll take a look at what we can do from analytics in terms of what's been reported.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all for this evening.
Okay, Any other questions? It's probably enough questions. Okay, correspondence, Mr. Johnson.
Worship, we just have one item of correspondence. It's from Trevor and Nancy Hall from Warwick Street. They're expressing appreciation for the fact that there was not the fast traffic on Warwick Street as a result of the closure or partial closure of the driveway lane leading down to the waterworks plant, and requested that that be considered something on a permanent basis, that would be restricted access there to reduce speeding. I do believe the Director of Public Works, Mr. Kearns, may have something to add to that.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. So I did meet with Mr. and Mrs. Hall regarding the issue on Water Street, probably midway through. So the closures resulted from the connection to the new development in terms of water and water connections. So the closure of the driveway was, that's why it resulted. I would suggest that if council would like, staff can look at that suggestion on an ongoing basis. We can take a look at the configuration and what that means to. I do also have other folks that I spoke to in the area were very appreciative of the tranquility that they've experienced in the last couple of weeks as well. So if council may want to.
When I read that letter, I thought I was going to ask if council would move in second some direction to investigate that. Councilor Borneman and Councilor Bachman. Any further discussion from anyone on this? Councilor Bachman?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah.
Microphone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, when reading the letter, those same thoughts came to my mind. And I also thought, do we also look at, if we're taking the time to look at that, do we also look at traffic in that neighborhood as a general and the impacts and, not getting it into any long report, but we know what this neighborhood is as a destination to the community and the impact of the traffic and the safety and the development. And I'm just wondering if there's other impacts that will result in that, not just the safety, and should we explore other, is this something, the start of something bigger? So that's just the only thoughts that came to my mind. Thank you.
Through your worship. I'm not sure that it needs to extend beyond. I think perhaps what we've seen as a result are people taking advantage of the existing transportation network without creating further issues elsewhere. One of the other things I forgot to mention we did do was had staff contact Google to remove that route from their mapping to access the boat launch at the Salt Dog, which we were unaware, I was unaware of. I didn't know that that's how Google Maps showed to get to the Salt Dog boat launch. So there's been a few good things come out of this, but I would suggest that what we've seen is the fact that people are able to take advantage of the other existing transportation network responsibly.
That's good. Councilor McCann.
Well, I was just going to ask if you could just clarify what the wording will be then and what we're voting on here. The road at the end of Warwick Street and then heading down towards the old water plant, that's not a legal throughway, is it? Like is that even considered a road beyond this point? What's the legality of the situation as it is right now?
Through your worship, I would suggest that it's a driveway, but it wouldn't meet the criteria or the design criteria for an actual roadway. And it does pass through the parking lot of our water plant, which is actually an industrial establishment. So,
Thank you.
So I guess the wording would be that council investigate the limited access to the driveway, whatever that goes in front of the water treatment plant. That's really what it is. Yeah. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right. Now, we have Mr. Diamond's report. We have Mr. Diamond on the line.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
There you are. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm joining you virtually tonight to provide a very brief report on a request by the Township of McDougall for comments on an application for a zoning amendment in the Township of McDougall. I trust that members of council have the report that I prepared this afternoon, however brief it is. There's a couple of reasons for the brevity. One, it needs to happen quickly. The McDougall public meeting occurs after this council meeting and before your next council meeting. And in order to be an active party in the application process, the municipality needs to provide written or oral correspondence to council before it makes a decision. The other reason my report is brief is that you've seen this application a couple of times before. The application is referred to as the Waltmar development application. They refer to it as Gateway to Georgian Bay. And it consists of a commercial development located on Osler Park Drive at Highway 400 on a lot that unusually is a single lot that's located both in the town and the township. There's 2.7 hectares in the town of Parry Sound and 3.1 hectares in the township of McDougall on the property. Council has seen this application through an application made by John Jackson on behalf of the owners of the property to remove the holding provision on the lands. The property is currently zoned environmental protection and highway commercial C3 with a hold on it. And an application was made to lift the hold as well as revise the EP zoning, change some of it to highway commercial C3. The previous town planner, Mr. LG, prepared a detailed planning report to you in April of 2021 and a second report in October of 2021. The April planning report recommended that the application be deferred for a number of reasons, and I'll go through those quickly for you. One of the concerns is that the land should be incorporated in the town of Parry Sound to deal with a single policy and servicing regime. It's unusual to have properties that are in two municipalities, although I've seen it on a number of occasions in Parry Sound, and this is not the first one or the last one you will deal with. It's complicated. The second was that the recommendation to rezone the lands from environmental protection to highway commercial was inconsistent with the applicant's own environmental report. The third was that the commercial uses were unknown, and your official plan requires that at certain stages a market study be done to ensure that the commercial development does not adversely affect the commercial function of the downtown. And from a planning perspective, you should also be concerned about the commercial functions of other commercial centers in the town. You know, this is problematic because the majority of the development is happening in McDougall, and of course, McDougall is not subject to the Parry Sound official plan policies. But at the same time, the proponent is suggesting some 93,000 square feet of commercial space, but not telling you what it is. And so Mr. LG had said that that work needed to be more fully explored. There was a concern that the access to the property from McDougall Township, if they were to propose that, would need to go through Blanding's turtle habitat, and the environmental report said that that need to be further explored. Mr. LG was concerned about the visual impact of the proposal because of its significant and prominent location at the gateway to Parry Sound. And finally, the town can't commit servicing capacity to the lands in McDougall. At the time, without a clear proposal of what's being proposed and how much capacity needed to be committed. So council supported the recommendations in that report. And subsequently, Mr. Jackson brought forward a request, a revised bylaw that was in October to request that the holding provision be lifted with somewhat different provisions in the bylaw. That was the October 2021 report. You had a planning report at council on that as well, and it recommended refusal of proposed bylaw for the same reasons as I've just been through. I received all of the information from the Township of McDougall that was submitted in support of this application before them now, and I can tell you that there's nothing new in the information that's been provided to McDougall than what you dealt with in April and October of last year. So I agree with your previous town planners reports from 2021. I think that the application is premature, and in my recommendations, I've indicated that the present policy of council is not to extend services outside the limits of the town. You've dealt with this in Seguin before, and you have agreements with McDougall, but your current policies are not to extend the services beyond the town limits. This entire development proposal is founded on the fact that it's going to be on full municipal services. And so if you can't service it, it can't happen. I think that's a simple way to put it. There's the second part is the proposal is not developed to a point that can provide assurance to the town regarding the impact on the Parry Sound downtown or the function of other commercial centers. And it is just, if I could say, a speculative proposal, trying to get the zoning in place and then see what will happen later on, if I can be blunt. The fourth is that the third environmental work is incomplete. The site's sensitive. The FRR report says additional work has to be done and it hasn't been done. And it's also visually sensitive. The trees, the landscape there are significant components of what makes the entrance to Parry Sound beautiful and needs to be considered in greater detail. And finally, the proposal should be in conjunction with municipal boundary discussions. Again, I'll just reiterate, Mr. Mayor, members of council, in my short tenure as the second time in my life being the planning consultant for the town of Parry Sound, the last time was 40 years ago. This is a situation where you have properties that are on half in one municipality and half on the other. Throughout the province of Ontario, most municipalities are separated by a 20-meter road allowance, but that's not the case between Parry Sound and McDougall. And this situation needs to be considered in a consistent way that's in the best interest of all involved. The developers that want to service their property, the municipality, town of Parry Sound that will service and provide the full range of services to it. And I think it's dangerous to move forward with one application without considering the larger picture. And so those are my recommendations to council.
Super, thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Diamond? Well, we do have a resolution, which we'll deal with right now. So it's moved by Councilor Burton and second by Councilor Borneman. The council receives and endorses the report of municipal planning consultant Jim Diamond regarding the town's response to McDougall Township post of a proposal to rezone lands in the McDougall border in the town, known as the Walmart development, and that staff in conjunction with Mr. Diamond be directed to send a response to McDougall Township which incorporates content of Mr. Diamond's report and reports from former town planner Taylor Elgie relevant to the Walmart development's rezoning application in McDougall. Any discussion? Councilor McCann?
So just to be clear then, are we voting to accept this report, or are we voting to turn it back to McDougall?
We are voting to accept this report and to write a letter based on Mr. Diamond's report and Mr. Elgie's report that was done in the past to send to McDougall to give our reasons why that property should really be in the town of Parry Sound and we're not extending services. Is that a fair enough synopsis, Mr. Diamond?
Yes, I think it is. And I think that a succinct letter will be of assistance to everyone involved.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. Councilor Backwell.
Thank you. I'm not sure, maybe this question is for Mr. Diamond, so, or maybe Mr. Harris, but I'm wondering, based on this report and our past reports regarding this matter, what is new in this report that hasn't been presented to council previously in Taylor's report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's nothing really new in that report. We don't have any new information. It's a different scenario though, Councillor. This time, the applicants have made an application to the Township of McDougall, and the Township of McDougall has a duty to consult with its neighboring municipalities. And this report is provide a recommendation for how you should respond to that request for comments.
Thank you for clarification.
Thanks. Anything further? All in favor? I don't see anyone opposed, so that's carried. Thank you.
I'll look forward to working with Mr. Rand once again on this.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond. Okay. Oh. Okay, so we're gonna go with reports tonight. And we'll start with Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. On June 23rd, I attended along with Councillor Borman an interview with excuse me, Queen Galloway Associates, or MGA, the firm that has been hired to prepare our new culture, parks and recreation master plan. Interesting to see that finished up and see what they report to us. On July 1st, my lady and I accepted an invitation from the Festival of the Sound to ride on the Canada Day boat cruise on the island fleet. As usual, time on Georgian Bay is amazing, and the music provided by the Municipal Roads Band made for a very nice outing. And the grand finale, the fireworks display provided by the town fair sound was pretty spectacular. On July 2nd, I attended the opening ceremony for the new break wall at the Big Sound Marina. I encourage everyone to take a walk on this new addition to the waterfront and enjoy what we have here. It is a wonderful facility, and thanks to the staff who worked hard to make this project happen. I want to give a little update on my food cycle, and just to enlighten people or to refresh people. A few months ago, the town agreed to take part in a pilot project for this mini waste recycler system, whereby residents of the town were able to buy the appliance at a reduced price and asked to take part by recording the number of cycles on a daily basis and turning over that info at the end of the 12-week program. But you get to keep the recycler. During the month of June, in a household with just 2 of us, we recycled 17 units of waste, and according to the formula provided by the company, that adds up to well over 100 pounds of garbage that we alone have diverted from the landfill and turned into food for our gardens. I want to make a final reminder that the Summer in the Sound event in our downtown on Saturday, July 16th. James Street between Stephen and Mary Street will be closed to vehicular traffic to accommodate the festivities, including sidewalk sales, carnival games, food prizes, a beer tent, live music provided by the Municipal Roads. The beer tent will be open only to those 18 or 19 years of age and older, and there will be a $5 entry fee into the beer tent. Reminder that the annual Art in the Park will be on at the same time in Market Square Park. Free parking will be available at Dunn's Storage at 15 William Street. And finally, an update from the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame Ad Hoc Committee. The federal government last week announced the granting of funds to help pay for this project. I'm not going to elaborate too much on that yet. I know Caitlin Dyer, the curator of the hall, is preparing a news conference or a news release for this week, so I don't want to burst her bubble. I'll let her announce that, and we'll wait to hear from her. And that's my report.
Thank you, worship, being here, everyone. I wasn't here on our last meeting day, so I want to report just one meeting that I attended prior to that date. On June 16th, I did a Zoom meeting with the ICE Cap group. I was extremely happy to see Mr. Cairns and I believe Mr. Harris as well there, as the group heard a pretty impressive report from Simcoe County with respect to waste diversion. It's a big factor for all of us as we go forward. And the takeaway that I had yet again from Simcoe County is that they did this on a regional basis. It wasn't a one-off community by community approach. That it was only when they achieved certain volumes of waste that they were able to do these things. So it's again something that the entire area needs to be working proactively to do, not just the town in isolation of others. On June 22nd, I attended the opening at the new Drop Center at the St. Mary's Center. They're offering various counseling and support to youth and community. I think it's a great thing whenever we have a grassroots driven group to come forward with initiatives like this. I see nothing but good things coming forward from this. As Councilor Burton mentioned, we attended the master plan interviews on the 23rd. I would hope that anyone who has comments or concerns would feel comfortable in putting their 2 cents forward while the opportunity exists in that regard. I don't think any input is bad input. On June 28th, along with Mr. Bonanza and Mr. Kearns, I went on what I call a walkabout with a lady named Kathy Horn from the Friends. She's a disabled lady, and she certainly brought some perspective to a variety of issues for the three of us. Everything from comparing asphalt to concrete sidewalks to the buttons that are used to change the lights, the length of time that the cycle runs, the speed and the volume of traffic on Bow Street, and the virtual non-separation of pedestrians from vehicular traffic there. The good news is she's agreed to join our accessibility committee. And I think that the more diverse opinions that we have there, the better the outcome will be. I would only say that I've known her a long time and she's a very tenacious person. So you two won't get off easy. I attended July 1st. I want to congratulate everyone who was involved with putting on the day, the events over the weekend. They were extremely well attended. The fireworks were great. My grandson told me so. And Ribfest was a big hit. As Councillor Burton mentioned, we attended the opening of the breakwater at Big Sound Marine, and certainly that's a huge improvement to the infrastructure. It's another welcoming point, another gateway to the town, and the upgrade there is pretty dramatic. Today, I spent most of the day at the airport. We had a regular airport commission, and we spent the rest of the day with a consultant, lady Karen Wyanecki, who's doing the updates to our strategic plan. And again, public input is more than welcome in that regard. I want to congratulate my good friend Tim McWhirter. Recently he received from the Ontario Hockey Federation the Bill Richmond Award, which is awarded to volunteers who put forward countless hours of their own time to the benefit of the game. And I want to remind people that Saturday, July 9th, the HMS Oriole is due to be at the town dock, Canadian naval vessel. Hopefully folks take the time to go down and have a look at this vessel. I'm told it's quite unique, and that's my report.
Thank you. Councilor McCann.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, and public. As been mentioned on Friday evening, the 30-plus year tradition of taking the festival, the sound musical cruise on the Island Queen was something my wife and I enjoyed. Thereafter, I think what we noticed was that after 2 years of the pandemic, it was just wonderful to see people, local and visitors, relaxed, really enjoying themselves and each other. The weather was pristine, and of course, it was topped off with the Canada Day fireworks on Parry Sound's waterfront. And indeed, the fireworks display was fantastic. It's kind of curious, you know, we've come a long way. Years ago, we would watch one firework to be thrown off and explode in the air, and be all impressed, and then we wait a few minutes for the next one and then the next one. But with the technology available today, and I was curious, so I went to YouTube and looked at how they do this today, and it's remarkable, the technology and the setup that's involved. So thanks to everyone involved with that. So that was the evening of Canada Day, July 1st, and then Saturday afternoon, as well, I attended the grand opening of the ribbon cutting ceremonies of the new and extended breakwater and dockage at Big Sound Marine. And I would just add that the manager of the operations of the Big Sound Marine Town Dock, George Stivrins, made a welcoming speech presentation, and certainly thank the people of the area, town staff, mayor and council, also small craft harbors, Croft Industrial, Schliger Construction, Links Electrical, and plumbing contractors, and certainly the folks, the boat owners and their families who avail themselves to the facilities of Big Sound Marine. The break wall also acts as an extended walking trail into the Parry Sound Harbor, and Mayor McGarvey then spoke and cut the ribbon. The town can now offer more dockage, which converts to additional revenue. And I would take this opportunity once again to remind you that the folks at West Parry Sound District Community Support Services continue to collect alcoholic containers that are redeemable. You can drop them off at Sobeys or at the McFarland station, and our volunteers pick them up and cash them in. And it's a great fundraiser, and it goes towards the activities and the events, the programs that Community Support Services conducts. And we're always looking for new programs, and this money will help to facilitate that, along with Meals on Wheels, transportation, friendly visiting, and other items that our residents, senior residents may need from time to time. So thank you for your donations. Please leave your garbage and other recycling at home. But we certainly would appreciate any redeemable containers left behind at those depots. And that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bachman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. Since our last meeting, I only had one meeting to attend, which was the Wellness Recreation and Community Center meeting, which I was unable to attend due to my son's graduation. So I'll make my report short and just echo the sentiments of the Canada Day remarks and the Ribfest remarks from our fellow councillors on the other side of the table. I had great response from the community. It was just my kids, when they went, said it was absolutely packed and the lineups were extremely long. So it was really great to see so many people out and about mingling and support the events that were sponsored this weekend. And with respect to our graduates in the community, I would just like to congratulate all of our graduating students in Parry Sound and those who also travel to Bracebridge for school. That's my report for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and the public. I attended the Committee of Adjustment meeting, and one minor variance was approved of at 98 James Street. And so that was good to see, as another housing, small housing development on top of a commercial building is a great thing to see for our downtown. I too attended the each day of the weekend of the Canada Day certainly activities and the Rib Fest. I actually participated in each day and supported the cause. And that way I could be certain which ones I liked at the end of the ribs. I do also want to say that I appreciated getting the complimentary ticket from the Festival of Sound, and Jeff Young's band certainly did a fine job. Matter of fact, for me, it was well enough that I was able to dance, so I was very happy. And so I guess I was free entertainment in a way for the cruise line. In addition to that, I would say I was late, and I do apologize, but sometimes life gets in the way, and you can try as much as you wish, but it happens in attending the breakwater ceremony. However, I still managed afterwards to go for a walk on the whole walkway, and I think that is a really lovely tourist attraction for people who are in the community and want to walk out into the water area. So not only the boats that are coming in, I think when you go for that walk, even if you don't have a boat, you're able to appreciate what a beautiful, again, harbor we have, and the potential that we have, and the quality of life that we have there. So I really hope that people will go out for a walk in that area, because it's just wonderful, it seems to me. And finally, today, I did do a quickie, shall we say, the tour at the Tuesday Farmers Market. And it's good, again, to see people coming out, to see the vendors there, to see all those parked vehicles. We know that means business. That's good for the town. And it's good to show community support. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, so council, staff, and public, June 22nd at 5 p.m. I had a public health board meeting. June 23rd and 24th, the AMO board and staff were here in Parry Sound for meetings. I just want to say that they really enjoyed Parry Sound and appreciated the hospitality. They were very pleased with the Stocky Center, the Bobby Orr arena, you know, and catering and everything else, the businesses, and it was just a great time, and they're very, very happy to be here. It was really the first in-person board meeting we've had in about 2.5 years, so there were a lot of people who were glad to see each other. June 28th was the Recreational Pool Committee meeting, and we acquired a project management firm, which is good. We're working towards the acquiring of the YMCA property, and things are moving along. It's taking a little bit of time, but there are steps that have to be followed. June 29th, I attended a fundraiser at Trestle Brewery for the Drop, which Councillor Borneman mentioned, opened in the Mary Street Center, the Youth Counseling Center, and the event was also held to celebrate Pride Month as well. So July 1st, Canada Day, it was great to see a crowd all day and right through to the fireworks. It was just super busy, and I really, you know, our MP and our MPP were there wandering around, which was good to see them out. I'd like to thank our April McNamara, our town staff, Stocky Center staff, the volunteers, OTT, and the other sponsors, and all the vendors and entertainers. The Stocky Center area was busy all weekend, which was really good. When someone mentioned to me today, why don't they, obviously, maybe we do some more advertising, but, you know, about music and dancing and whatever. I said, there was music all weekend. And I said, if you wanted to dance, you could get up and dance. And then, oh, really? I said, yeah. So anyway, it was there, it was done, and there were a lot of smiling faces, and that display of fireworks was absolutely fantastic. July 2nd, as was mentioned, ribbon cutting for the official opening of the new breakwater and boardwalk at Big Sound Marina. Councillor Keith is right. That is an absolutely amazing boardwalk. To get out there and walk around, and then you can come back and you can look at the town dock again. You know, not only is it a beautiful walkway, but the beautiful scenery and being out on the water, as we mentioned, and the fact that it also provides extra boat slips, so extra revenue. So that's, it's a win-win. Finally, I'd like to offer my condolences to the Harris family with the passing of Graham Harris. Many will remember the musical talents of Graham over the years, and also as a business person downtown with Will's Restaurant. One thing you could always guarantee with Graham was you always be sure of a conversation. So he will be missed, and I will say, because I believe it happened either early in the morning on Canada Day or that night, but his son Dave was entertaining the next day. And I tell you, what a trooper to be out there entertaining on Canada Day and playing music and singing. I told him his dad would be very proud of him, because the show went on. So, that's my report. On with the agenda. Okay. First item is the item from closed. Moved by Councillor Burden and seconded by Councillor Borman, the bylaw number 2022-7268, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement of purchase and sale of Prospect Point Development Corporation and Disler Construction Limited for the exchange of properties known as Rabbit Canyon and Emily Street property to be considered as read a first time. All in favor? And that's carried. Are all members in favor of having the second and third reading? Carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor Burden, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Chief Thompson, is there anything you want to add to this at all?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's nothing I would like to add other than to just summarize that this is a exchange of lands with other conditions attached to it, to bring into the town's possession the property beside Wabano Beach, which has the Rabbit Canyon Trail that runs across it. Council will be well aware that there was some controversy over the access to this piece of trail. Adding this piece of land to our already fantastic Wabano Beach is going to be quite important for future generations of Parry Sounders.
Not only is it an exchange, but there's also money too, right?
That is correct. I mean, the property is being exchanged at fair market value to ensure that it's a fair and transparent exchange of lands.
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Councilman McCann.
And again, I would like to reiterate my thanks to staff for the hard work that was done on this. And of course, this is going to mean at some point in the near future, additional housing, much needed housing for the area, which will also increase our tax base. So all around, I think everyone wins at the end of the day.
Anything further? All in favor? Carried. Item 921, moved by Councillor Burden, second by Councillor Borneman, that council authorize the application be made to the COVID-19 Recovery Fund for heritage organizations, museums assistance program for the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame, and that Caitlin Dyer be confirmed as the person that's signing the board. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Burden, second by Councillor McCann. Yeah. Dr. McCann. Well, yours and Councillor Horns are, if you get the squiggle going, they're very similar. But I know he's not here tonight, so it's anyway. The council accepts the quote from Municipal Auto Parts in the amount of $11,600 for the replacement of the sander unit for 08230 as part of the town's winter maintenance program, this being the lowest of two quotes received. And the council accepts the quote from Municipal Auto Parts in the amount of $11,600 for the purchase of a sander unit for 08290 as part of the town's winter maintenance program, this being the lowest of two quotes received, and that two sander units be funded through the fleet replacement reserve. Discussion? Council Keith?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted clarification, Mr. Cairns. I realize this report certainly suggests with a second sander, there will be more efficiency as we move towards single persons operating machinery. But I'm just wondering, is the sander, shall we say, the same make as the sander we also had? I was looking at parts and that sort of thing.
Through your worship. So the short answer is no, it won't be the same as the existing sanders. These units are actually hauling sanders, so plastic hoppers and electric fed chains and spinners. So the chains move material down to the end of the truck, and the spinner is what creates the pattern. So they're different and more modern, and staff also consulted with some surrounding municipalities who have a bit of a longer history with those particular units before coming to this conclusion as well.
So my follow-up question is, how long are they expected, like the life expectancy if all goes well for this new one?
Through your worship, so from some of our neighbors, I think we are hearing somewhere in, so far, I believe around 8 years, with some very minor replacements, and they're still functioning. So.
Any further questions? All in favor? Carried and opposed. Moved by Councilor McCann and seconded by Councilor London, whereas Blue Box regulation was amended on April 14th, 2022 to allow a producer responsibility organization, PRO or PROs representing through producers that make up 66% of the provincial recycling tonnage to establish a provincial framework for the Blue Box system post-transition. And whereas Circular Materials, CM, the largest PRO, has indicated they will be the collection system administrator for the provincial Blue Box program. And whereas CM is seeking information on July 15th, 2022, and whether municipalities are interested in contracting for them to provide recycling collection services from their date of transition until December 31st, 2025, to ensure a smooth transition process. Now therefore be it resolved that the Director of Finance and the Director of Public Works, in consultation with the Chief Administrative Officer, be delegated authority to negotiate terms and execute any necessary agreements and documents with CM or other PROs and other parties to ensure collection service continuity through the Blue Box transition, and that staff respond to CM by July 15th, 2022, outlining a willingness to discuss provision of recycling collection services on behalf of CM from the town of Parry Sound's date of transition to December 31st, 2025, should the negotiated terms and compensation be acceptable. And that in the case where negotiations between the town and CM do not result in acceptable terms, taking into consideration the integrated solid waste management system, the Director of Finance and the Director of Public Works be authorized to notify CM that the towns intend to opt out of these arrangements or portions thereof, which will result in CM assuming responsibility for Blue Box services following the town's transition date of January 1st, 2024. Kearns, do you have anything more to add to this one? Because I know there's a lot more going on than what's in here. So
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. I'll apologize for how long that is, but there is a lot of information.
Need to drink after that.
There is, you'll see, there's a lot of similar resolutions going to councils at this time because of the dates. And staff are aware of, obviously, the election period coming up and the potential impact that has on the municipality to be able to conduct negotiations during that period, potentially. So that's why you're seeing some of the requests for delegations of authority to staff to be able to continue that. So the blue box transition process is a very lengthy one. It's been going on for quite some time. It's getting closer. As you can see, there's actually an entity now, that being Circular Materials, who has indicated they're going to have 66% market share essentially of recycling. They're going to represent 66% of the tonnage, the producers of that tonnage, and they are going to negotiate. What we're looking at is we don't do the collection ourselves, obviously. We contract to have that provided right now. The idea would be that we would potentially, depending on the negotiated terms, continue that process where we procure the services of a contractor to supply the recycling services on behalf of the producer responsible organization. This is a bridging mechanism between transition dates that are occurring from the start of 2023 right up until the end of 2025, where the entire province will transition to a consolidated blue box system January 1st, 2026 by that date. So what's happening is that is a huge process. There's a lot of different programs and processes all over the province. Blue box materials are different depending on which municipality and which area of the province you live in. The idea is that Circular Materials would like to be able to negotiate, understand, and move towards that 2026 date in an orderly fashion and ensure that the services that everyone currently receives, they continue to receive up until that point where everyone will receive the same services across the province. So there are a lot of agreements that go along with this. There are some really large agreements that are on the table right now. So we're working with groups through email that is representing municipalities' interests, and certainly they're keeping us abreast of the direction everything is heading in. And we're working closely with area municipalities, including the District of Muskoka, one of our largest neighbors in terms of blue box materials, to understand how everybody's working towards this transition, hopefully in an orderly fashion.
Thank you. Councilor McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Kearns. Yeah, a lot going on. To the average resident, what is this going to look like? Will we be using a different kind of a blue box? And will we be putting fibers and containers in together? And I guess this removes the need for the service from our current service provider, picks up garbage and recycling. I guess that would change as well too then. And what happens at the transfer station where we collect recyclables? I guess I'm just curious to know what all that's going to look like once this transition is in place. And these questions may be premature, but just out of curiosity, I'm wondering.
Through your worship, so perhaps answering some of those questions might be a little premature. If I were guessing going forward, a consolidated single stream collection is problematic. I can't imagine that the producers of materials want them mixed more than they already are in terms of collection. So there was a period of time where a lot of municipalities moved to what's called single stream in terms of mixing fibers and containers together. I would suggest that probably that would not be an advancement necessarily. However, when we move to transition, the producers are going to have responsibility for life cycle management of the products they're producing. So the idea is that they will begin to change packaging perhaps to be able to manage it more responsibly or more economically, more efficiently. So it's hard to imagine what that might result in. As you mentioned, that's the comment about integrated waste management. Most municipalities operate integrated waste management. So you have garbage and you have refuse and recyclables. We may see alternate collection schedules. So blue box, in a lot of municipalities, blue box is every second week with garbage being the alternate schedule every second week, for instance. That's an example that exists in some places around the province. So that's part of all these negotiations. As I mentioned, the master service agreements, they have drafts of them right now. There's one for curbside collection. There's one for depot collection. There's one for public space collection. There's one for residential. There's about 6 different ones that all deal with those things. So they're all being considered, and we happen to be lucky enough to have both depot and curbside. So we hit both of those programs. Isn't always the case when you have curbside often, that's all you have. So we have both, but both of those programs are being contemplated moving forward. So.
Okay, thanks very much.
That's a key.
Yes, I'm not trying to be premature in my question, but here it comes. In this negotiation, is there an aspect of education? I don't expect that we're going to know what all it is, but I didn't really read that. Is that going to be part of the negotiation? Because obviously, whatever comes about at some point, public et cetera need to be educated, and who's picking up the bill for that?
Through your worship, there is actually a master service agreement for promotion and education as well. I might suggest that you're going to see it on a broader scale across the province because of the consolidated system across the province. The end result is supposed to be that regardless of Parry Sound or Thunder Bay, what goes in your blue box is the same. So that's the plan moving forward. And I would suggest that we'll see a broad education campaign by the time 2026 rolls around throughout that transition period as well. We may see some changes in what's acceptable in the blue box program. We will see some things that change because it's actually quite amazing how different programs are in terms of what they accept around the province.
Yeah, there is going to have to be an education program because there is expectation then made on the service with regard to percentages, with regard to what ends up being garbage because it's contaminated, okay, and what's clean. So the general public on certain items or whatever, especially containers and that sort of thing, they're going to have to be cleaned before they go into the recycling. Because if something goes in dirty, then it contaminates an area and it will be classified as garbage. And we are expected to meet certain targets. And if you're not, then I believe there's a penalty for that to the municipality for having excessive garbage and not recycling. So yeah, there's still a lot of stuff to work out. It's huge. It's a moving target right now. And because, you're dealing with 444 municipalities in Ontario and not, it's not a cookie cutter. So, and that's what these big corporations and CMO or whatever have to realize is that you can't just walk into every municipality and expect the same, situation. So it's a challenge. Anyway. Anyone opposed? Or sorry, everyone in favor? That's carried. No opposed. Moved by Councillor Keith and second by Councillor Back on the bylaw number 7264, being the bylaw to approve a loan of $700,000 to the Parry Sound Area Municipal Airport Commission to fund the runway project. Be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and second by Councillor Bachman that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time. Passed, signed, and sealed. Someone, oh, Mr. Harris? You want to speak to this?
Yes. I have a few comments I could make if council wishes.
Yeah, go for it.
The Township of Seguin and the Town of Parry Sound received a request from the Airport Commission for a loan. In 2021, an expansion of the airport, an extension of the runway was approved, 10.5 million. Subsequently, though, with the rising costs related to fuel, diesel, and anything related to that, as well as just generally construction labor costs, the commission engaged Tatham Engineering to reevaluate the cost to complete the runway project. The result of that work and a decision to relocate the rock borough area resulted in cost increases of 1.4 million. The town and Seguin are 50-50 owners in the airport lands, and so the request is split between the town and Seguin. The airport manager is joining us this evening, Neil Parry. He's there to answer any questions. What's being recommended is the town advance 700,000, which is 50% of the increase requested. That is advanced by way of a repayable interest-bearing loan. And that's kind of the short version of it. If there are any questions from members of council.
Councillor Borneman, I think, wants to speak to it.
Mine is not a question. Mine's
Okay.
sort of to augment Mr. Harris's comments as the town's representative. So I'm going to back up prior to the runway contract and remind council that the airport's undertaken any number of expansions over the past several years. We've leveraged upwards of $8 million worth of financing from senior levels of government. There's been multiple $1 million of private sector investment at the airport. The airport, through all of that, managed to do so with no municipal assistance. We delivered those projects on time and on budget. This situation is kind of the result of an almost perfect storm in the sense that we were granted the funding from the feds. Initially, Seguin were funding about $2.5 million worth of work, again with a loan of a similar nature to what's requested here over the next 25 years. The cost of fuel is virtually doubled since the tender was let, and we were aware that the costs were escalating, and it was because of our concern that we engaged Tatham to do this review and bring it back to the table at this relatively early junction. I'm going to speak to this, I guess, wearing my airport hat, saying that we've received the funding from the province. The contract is well underway. I don't know that we have an option of backing out at this point for those reasons. It would be foolhardy in my mind, especially considering the state of the runway as it now sits. We're at the end of the usable life cycle there. So we are where we are. Councillor McCann asked during Clayton's summation what the rock borough area is. Basically, through the tender, it was identified that there's quite a bit of blasting to do there. And, obviously there's a need for quite a bit of granular material. So we're blasting and producing granular material on site. And the changes to the Rockboro area basically are changes that both work for the airport in the long term, in the sense that we're blasting flat certain areas, but it also works to the furtherance or the completion of this contract in the sense that we're getting more materials on site, which is certainly cheaper than trucking them in from elsewhere. Try to answer any other questions. Oh, and I do, before I let go, I do want to thank Mr. Harris for the work. This has been ongoing for about the past month. I'm going to say 4 weeks. We hope to have it on the last council agenda. I was in a panic because I was in Wawa for my grandson's graduation, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do both of those things. But at any rate, Mr. Harris has been back and forth numerous times with Mr. Inwood and Miss Fraser from Seguin, who have done the financials from the airport's perspective with respect to their ability to repay these loans, and satisfied Mr. Harris, who's a pretty good horse trader, of the airport's ability to do that. So I want to thank you for your efforts in that regard, Mr. Harris.
Councilor Blackman and then Councilor McCann.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question then would be for Mr. Harris at this time. Councilor Borneman just stated that you've been corresponding about the ability for the airport to pay this loan back and over the duration, and you've seemed satisfied with that in your reports. I'd just like you to elaborate on what financials you may have been privy to make that decision that may not be included in this report tonight.
Through to the mayor to Councillor Backen. The treasurer for the township of Seguin does all the finances, the bookkeeping for the airport commission, and it's in reliance on her work, because not only is the town going to be loaning money, the township of Seguin has already agreed to loan 2.5 million plus another 700,000. So they're heavily vested in the airport's ability to repay, and so we've relied on Seguin's finance departments and their analysis, and they also, as I say, are very familiar with the books and the projections, what this new runway will generate in terms of revenue.
Just as a follow-up, maybe my question could be for Mr. Parry or Mr. Borneman, but I'm just wondering, has there been any cash flow analysis presented that shows sustainability throughout the duration of the loan, and has that been done?
Well, certainly the airport derives revenue from a variety of sources, fuel sales, leasing land, leasing buildings, various resources, and the projections that Ms. Fraser has put together, those have been done over, not just as a result of this, those were done at the time the applications were made to the province and the feds for the original funding dollars. Those were revisited when the grant awards were made in order to satisfy the township of Seguin that the airport were able to carry the $2.5 million that they originally agreed to fund, and those have been revisited most recently within the past 4 to 5 weeks, again to provide some confidence that this isn't a wish and a prayer, that this is a solid investment for the area.
Thank you, Councillor Barman. That was, definitely, makes a lot of sense, and I do support, the growth of our industrial parks, and we see it as what we're doing in the industrial park in Carling, and obviously this is huge for the area, what we're trying to achieve with the airport, and as well, we saw with just the issues that we have with our own commercial base growing on our boundaries, that this seems like a good solution to continue growing those industrial parks. Thank you.
Councilor Barnum, and then before Councilor McCain.
I didn't report on this, and I mentioned that I've been at a commission meeting today, and it sort of stunned me. I think June was a pretty good weather month, so more flying happens during good weather months and bad, but we set an all-time record at the airport, not just with respect to revenue with regarding fuel sales, but volume in June. I was, with the price of fuel being at its absolute peak, surprised the heck out of me, but I guess if you can afford a plane, you can afford gas.
Oh. Councilor McCain.
I'm afraid my jet is in the shop this week. So.
Yeah.
I support this. Thanks to the leadership and the vision of the airport commission and the people that work down there, the success of the airport is testament to that vision and the leadership. I don't know the political history so much, but I do know how, and I'm aware of the timeline in terms of how the airport has grown over the years. I had a part-time job down there once a week, making coffee, cleaning the toilets, and putting fuel in the planes. And I think we had, there were a couple of hangars back then, but man, it's just like there's no comparison today when you look at what the land that's leased, the buildings that are out there, and the services that are added. I have a vision that we could someday enjoy the success that the airport of Municipal enjoys with having a runway that's long enough, wide enough to allow for bigger planes to enter the area such as Porter. I think that could happen, and I think that someday I would hope that the entire West District will be supportive of the airport, because I think we all gain from it, not just Seawood and not just Parry Sound. So after all that, I just have one question in terms of the funds that we would loan. Where would that be pulled from at this time?
Through the mayor to Councillor McCann. This is a loan, so the town has investments. We've got funds invested in GICs. We've got funds in the town's general bank account. So we'd be looking at just replacing the investment in the town's bank account, or perhaps in a GIC, and replace it with a loan to the airport.
Great, thank you.
One last comment: if Councillor McCann wanted to revisit his youth and start pumping fuel again, we'd hire him tomorrow.
You might need some cleaning done here too, you never know.
I'm sorry?
I might need some cleaning done too there.
Oh, yeah.
Councilor Bachman?
Thank you. Just final questions on this. I read in the report from, I believe it's Tatum, that the fuel price index is going to be monitored. So I'm just wondering, is there a chance that there will be additional asks coming forward, or are there contingencies built in place?
I wonder if Mr. Parry can answer this question.
Sure.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good evening. So this report that Tatum put together, they tracked this out over the entire project. So they have indeed estimated what the fuel indexes would ride up to. If you can see, they've they've chosen to go ahead with $2 a liter. And they've also chosen a rather high number for the asphalt as well, in hopes that this is the high point that it will hit. But when you're projecting out like that, I'm going to have to say that there's always a possibility it could be low.
Thank you.
Anything further? No, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Moved by Councillor Bird, second by Councillor McCann. That bylaw number 2022-7265 being a bylaw to transfer pool trust funds to the West Parry Center Recreation and Cultural Center Board to be considered read the first time. All in favor? Carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Burton. That the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor Keith?
Yes, I'm just, thank you, I'm just a little curious. It seems to me over the years, my memory serves me that the balance in the account is the figure 40,000. It says approximately 40,000. And I'm just wondering, was any of that money invested? Because it just seems to me that it should maybe have been a little bit more. Was that just an approximate maybe whatever interest, or if it was invested during the period of time, there is somewhat more than what I see here?
Mr. Harris?
Through the mayor, Councillor Keith, it's close to 40,000. Interest was applied over the years. There was some money spent recently just to cap off some due diligence work that was required, and that recommendation came to council. I believe that was around $8,000, if I recall correctly.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? All in favor? Oh, right, okay, yeah. So we have a direction, and I need to move it second for it. So that Councilor Bachman and Councilor McCann. The staff be directed to obtain the necessary approvals from the Optimist Club and the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario to release the pool funds to the West Parry Center Recreation and Cultural Center Board. Discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councilor Keith and second by Councilor Bachman, that bylaw number 2022-7266, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an amending agreement with Product Care Association of Canada for the collection of paint and coatings, pesticides, and solvent as part of the Municipal Hazardous and Special Waste, or MHSW program, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? And that's carried. Are all members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councilor Keith and second by Councilor Bachman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councilor McCann?
Well, just because we're making Mr. Kearns work for his money today, and this is our last one, can you tell us how our service has been with this company as we move forward? And if you have any concerns or complaints or comments or compliments?
Through your worship. So a lot of the wording in here is similar to the blue box report, because the province is moving to producer responsible organizations right across the board. This is essentially a housekeeping item. What we discovered, the majority of our household hazardous waste program is administered through Brendar Environment Company. That has supplied us for many years. Just the model in who is compensating whom is changing in this producer responsible organization formulation. So what we've done here is removed pressurized, so small green, essentially boils down to small green propane containers that you use on appliances. Those are the pressurized containers that Product Care Association was not providing as high a return as another producer responsible organization. RISE was the company that we chose to administer those containers. So it does get a little bit confusing. Essentially, everything goes through Brendar Environmental, and they figure out which organization is paying for that process. So we don't have any complaints. It essentially boils down to the housekeeping. It's almost it's a paperwork exercise at the end of the day to determine who's taking what and who's compensating at what level.
Okay, great. You're dismissed.
That's like the table.
Oh, yeah.
Carry the vote.
Any other questions? No? All right, all in favor then? That's carried.
I used to get corrected.
Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Bachman, the bylaw number 2022-7267, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, be considered as read the first time. All in favor? Carried. All members in favor of having second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Bachman, the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All in favor? That's carried. Prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next regular meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for July 19th, 2022 at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held at the town of Parry Sound Council Chambers at 52 Seaman Street, entrance by Gibson Street, and it will be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. Council meeting schedule, notices of special council meetings, complete agendas and minutes, and instructions on accessing live streamed and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website, www.parrysound.ca, under news and public notices. Your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. And for Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.